I know I need to size up with you, and when I defang the Viper, trust me, ain't gonna come from nowhere. Jeff, I already put you out. I don't even know why you're out here right now. Keep on talking. Hey, do me a favor. Why don't you act like this is an AA meeting and you shut your mouth while I'm sharing with the group? And Mustafa, you out here, a boy among men. And I'm gonna tell you what, you got lucky at the Rumble, so I know you're gonna come out here and run your mouth about how bad you are. But let me give you a little bit of a reality check. You see, Mustafa, you said that my eyes don't lie. Well, your eyes don't lie either, because last week, they were closed real tight when I put your simple ass to sleep. And AJ, hey man, be honest with me. How's our old girl Wendy doing?
Welcome back to the Clark Street Wrestling Podcast. It's me, Hafeez. With me, as always, is Devin, and we have a special guest returning with us here today, Jeremy Prophet, professional wrestler, podcast host, Jofo in the Ring. Thank you so much for coming with us again. It's definitely a pleasure having you back on the show so quickly. We talked to you a little bit ago. Unfortunately, we couldn't spend too much time with you, but we are just ecstatic to have you back, man. Really excited to be able to pick up the conversation where we left off from last time, man. So first off, how you doing?
Oh, man, I'm doing fantastic. You know, I love doing these things. Ever since COVID hit, you know, I haven't really been in the wrestling ring that much. But when it comes down to it, you know, I'm just as happy being here on a podcast, talking about my favorite thing in the world, which is wrestling. And, hey, you know, what a better way to end Black History Month than to have three outstanding African Americans like ourselves, three good-looking gentlemen, I might add as well, here to break it down and to give the people what they want, give them their money's worth here on your great show.
Yes, absolutely, man,
yeah.
absolutely.
Appreciate
Great way to
that.
cap off Black History Month, man.
Right.
Like, wasn't even planned that way, but hey, you know what? We might as well just go ahead and go with that. So that's awesome. That's awesome. You mentioned like everything going on with COVID and not being able to wrestle right now, but in watching wrestling, what are your thoughts on just wrestling in general right now in this kind of pandemic COVID, you know, wrestling era that we have? Like, what's been your just feelings on watching it?
To be quite honest, I have never been more proud of the major wrestling companies for how they've managed to just tank right through this virus, to make sure that the people are still being entertained week after week. Regardless of the fact that there's no fans, they're still doing their best to give us that same ambiance that wrestling always creates. And I feel that the talent have been forced to step it up, and they've definitely been stepping up to the plate and hitting home run after home run. Because, I mean, there are weeks I watch, and you wouldn't be able to even tell that there aren't fans there. These guys are going out, they are busting their tails to make sure that the people watching at home are getting something. You know, all the other major sports, the NBA, the NHL, Major League Baseball, they've all had their hiccups, they all had to stop. Wrestling never took a day off, kept putting out content week after week. WWE, AEW, even Ring of Honor doing their thing now too. And so it's great to see that the one sport that some people will say is not really a legitimate sport, but it doesn't change the fact that professional wrestling, these are still athletes, and they have been able to persevere through this pandemic without missing a beat. So people got to start putting some respect on the name of professional wrestling because they keep delivering. And, you know, come hell or high water, I think nothing will stop Vince McMahon and Tony Khan from being able to make sure that people are getting their dose of wrestling every single week.
Hell yeah, man. Like, love that. And yeah, just 100%, man. It's just been so, for me as a wrestling fan watching it, you know, like you said, I have a lot of take a lot of pride in the fact of what you just said, that, you know, no matter what, they found a way to go out there and just give us a show. You know, that WrestleMania that they did last year, like, I'll tell the truth, like, I loved it. You know, I actually loved the experience of, okay, we split it up. And Devin actually talked about this the year prior. So, hey, split it up into 2 days because it was kind of getting a little bit long anyway. And it actually turned out to be something that was really cool because you had 2 days to kind of just enjoy the product with WrestleMania. And so that was fun. And even with the no crowd, they found ways to still, like, just go out there, deliver, kick ass, and, you know, put on some great matches and experiment a little bit too. Like cinematic wrestling, like, it is what it is. You know, some people love it, some people hate it, but, you know, they're experimenting. So I appreciate just them just trying to find different creative ways to entertain us. And I guess on that topic, I wasn't even planning on asking about this, but what did you feel? How do you feel about cinematic wrestling in this whole era that we're in?
I think cinematic wrestling is great. It definitely has its place. It's been very well received, and it's been very well executed at the same time. I mean, a lot of people might say, oh, you know, a lot of the magic of wrestling isn't there because, you know, it's not live, it's pre-taped. Well, look, live wrestling only became a thing during the Attitude Era. Everything else before that was all taped. Gave them time to polish out the mistakes, gave them time to make sure that they were getting the right kinds of reactions, the best kind of angles. You didn't have to drill in guys, hey, you know, work the hard cam and make sure when you put on a hold that, you know, the guy, you can see his face and that kind of stuff, because they had post-production. And those guys were geniuses at what they did. So the way I see it, you know, wrestling being taped or being cinematic is not a bad thing. It gives a chance to present the absolute best it can be. And realistically, I mean, if they even decide this year, WrestleMania, which I don't think they're going to have WrestleMania pre-taped, I think it's going to be live and there's probably going to be a lot of people. But if they decided to throw in a few cinematic matches again, I'd be all for that, because I think the two that they presented with John Cena and Bray Wyatt, as well as the Boneyard match, which I personally liked a lot more, I think they were steps in the right direction. And I think, you know, my take on wrestling isn't the same as everybody else's. I feel like wrestling, it's kind of like the circus. You know, it can't be just one thing. You got to have some lion tamers. You got to have some strong men. You got to have some clowns. You got to have some acrobats. So cinematic wrestling, I think, is just another spice being put into the recipe to be able to give you that finished product that tastes oh so sweet.
I like that, man.
Love that.
So I know we already spoke from a fan experience. Now, speaking from yours personal experience, how have you transitioned into the quarantine era of wrestling?
In a lot of ways, it's brought me back to my roots. You see, for me, obviously, wrestling is my bread and butter. That's what I want to do in life. That's been something that I've been blessed to be able to do 15 years nonstop. Actually going to be 16 years in a couple of months. Time flies like that. But I've done it 15 years, never been injured, no broken bones, no torn ligaments, no concussions, not a scratch on my face that wasn't already there before I started this journey. But when it came down to it, I mean, I've never taken a break. 3 weeks off was the most I've had in my career, and that's just when Christmas and New Year's kind of fall on weekends and local promoters don't want to put on shows. So, I mean, I like to wrestle. I like to be as active as possible. I've done sometimes, 30 days straight. I've literally done 30 days straight on a tour, Sunday to Sunday, no days off, loving it. And I guess I'm just built for this. But like I said, it kind of took me back to my roots a bit, because I had to find out and remember what life was like before wrestling. And in the fact that now I'm doing a podcast with the guys at Jofo, that was something that I did before. I mean, my education's in journalism. That's what I went to college for. I used to actually host a college wrestling show on the college radio, much like you guys are doing, much like podcasts out there. But, this is going back to 2003, 2004, around then.
Oh, wow.
And so it's going way, way back. And, so this is actually what I have my education in. So now getting to work with Jofo, getting to appear on fine shows like Clark Street, getting to, do interviews with a lot of people who I've met up and down the roads here in wrestling, and now get to speak to them like this. It's been refreshing. It's been great, and it's been a great way to stay focused and stay relevant within the wrestling community, while at the same time, getting my name and my message out there for people. So yeah, it's been a learning experience, and I think that by the time wrestling does come back, at least where I'm at, because I see it slowly coming back in other parts of the world, by the time it comes back here in Canada, I think I'm going to be better than ever because of all the knowledge that I've been able to absorb. And I think the world, I'll be honest with you, I don't think the world's ready for the Jeremy Prophet. They're going to see, well, I was outstanding before, but now I'm going to be damn near immaculate by the time I come back.
Hell yeah, man. Hell yeah. So you were saying the Canadian wrestling right now, it's not completely gotten back on its feet, like it's not really up and going right now?
It is, at the moment, inactive from coast to coast. No shows going on. Not even any kind of shows like Ring of Honor's doing, where there's no fans. It's no shows are being allowed. The government just won't allow it. Strict COVID protocol going into play. A lot of politics, a lot of fighting between, if you guys aren't familiar with the Canadian government system, we have a prime minister, not a president. So his powers as a prime minister are a lot more limited than what a president has. Can't really overrule anything if the House is going to, be deadlocked in a vote, that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of infighting, especially where I'm from in Quebec, because the Quebec government absolutely hates the prime minister. I think the prime minister is doing the best job he can be doing, given that, we're all learning how to navigate these new waters. Right. But when it comes down to it, the infighting is slowing the progression because people want to win elections and people want to put the blame on others. And so that's what we're dealing with. And I think, especially where I'm from, that's what's keeping things from moving forward. But from coast to coast, no wrestling going on, lots of talented wrestlers not getting their reps in, not doing shows, a lot of companies losing money. I know personally one promotion that I was set to, just before COVID hit, I was set to go on tour with them. They're called CWE. They're based out of Winnipeg. The promoter's name is Danny Duggan. Great promoter, great wrestler too. And he tours all across Canada, and he's slowly been moving further east. And I was going to help him actually get into Quebec, which is where I'm from, for the first time, and possibly also into the Maritimes. That was supposed to be in April. Everything shut down in March. So he, just one example, he relies on his tours to make his living. And so it's been really rough for him because he hasn't even been able to put on any kind of show. And he got the okay to put on one, and still, cops showed up. They wanted to fine him. It was a big story. And that's just what we're dealing with now. So, when we see stuff like I just saw today, there's a show going on in Texas, the company SWE Fury, that my good friend Hannibal, Devin Nicholson, is down covering for his channel, for Hannibal TV. I see a sold-out house. They must have, I'd say, easily 700 or 800 people in there, at least from the pictures I saw. So it's like a bizarro world where, down south, there are all these shows going on. Wrestling's essential in Florida. Texas, clearly doing well. California, a lot of shows going on there. And I know that a lot of my good friends in the Northeast, they're kind of like us. So I guess it's really just a state-by-state, province-by-province basis right now, where certain places are up and active. They know that life goes on. COVID's just a detour, and obviously if you're going home and you run into a detour, you're not going to decide not to go home. You're going to just find another way. So it's good to see places are doing that. I wish Canada would get up to speed and do the same thing, because there are too many great talents that are losing a year of their career. Imagine a guy like me, 15 years, never took a break, never wanted to, and now stuck at home, losing a full year practically of being able to do the one thing that they love. And we're professionals. We're the best in the world at what we do. We're professional athletes, and we're being denied the ability to do that at a time where there are more jobs than ever in the wrestling world. So it's both frustrating and it's a little disheartening, but I mean, I'm someone that's always going to stay optimistic, because I know that people overcome things in the world. That's how progress happens. So this is just another obstacle we got to overcome. And, we got to keep fighting every day to make sure that the right people hear what we have to say and know that, hey, look, we got a lot of great talent here that just want to get back in the ring.
Man, so with that, just a couple things crossed my mind. Yourself and some of the other wrestlers that just aren't able to perform because of everything going on right now. Like, I'm just thinking, like, what are you guys doing now because if that's your main, like, source of income, that's your main, just way of putting food on the table, like, I'm just thinking, like, man, like, that's a lot of people out of work. Like, how do you, go about replacing that in the meantime? So what are some things that you know of that people are doing to just kind of like make it through this, because the end, I don't know if, like, end doesn't maybe seem completely in sight necessarily right now. So, like, what are some of the guys doing that you know personally, that you talk to?
Well, at the start of this, I mean, one of the options people had was obviously to train other wrestlers. There was still a demand for people to want to be in the wrestling business. So a lot of guys were opting now to train people, since you have a lot more time, since you don't have to do shows. But when it comes down to it, we're dealing with such obstacles here by the government that they even outlawed that. Like right now, like you guys, if I'm not mistaken, are you guys out of Chicago?
Chicago.
That's right.
Chicago.
Yep.
Okay. I'm glad we actually got a chance to do this a second time, because I didn't even get to talk the last time about how I've been to Chicago and wrestled in Chicago before, and got to see the city. One of the few places it was a afternoon show. Each show was in the afternoon. It was part of Riot Fest in Chicago a couple of years back, and a good buddy of mine by the name of the Great Malachi hooked me up to be able to go and perform in Chicago. It was quite a thrill. Got to see the city. Loved it.
That's awesome.
All that to say, things are very different in Chicago compared to where I am in Quebec. So we have the strictest COVID restrictions of anywhere in North America. Anywhere. From Mexico all the way up to Nunavut. We have the strictest regulations right now. So restaurants are closed. Stores only recently were allowed to sell non-essential goods, which means like you go, let's say, to Shoppers Drug Mart, so they can sell you, dental floss, toothbrushes, soap, food if they have it. But you want to pick up, let's say, a notebook. You want to get, a comb, or well, you guys don't have hair, but I mean, like, you want.
That was a personal choice, by the way, to let you know. Personal choice.
But when it comes down to it, they were only able to sell what were deemed essential goods. Mm-hmm. So that was another restriction. Also, gyms have been closed. Pretty much since the start. There was about a 2-month period. They reopened gyms, but then they decided, okay, we're going to close the gyms again too. So people can't even go train, and that affected the training part of wrestling too, where wrestling schools also had to close down because they weren't allowed to do that anymore. And that was how a lot of the guys were subsidizing their income, was by putting in more hours at the school and taking on more people that want to learn this game. So wrestling was impacted on a number of levels. I mean, even I myself, I'm with 3 companies, not 3 companies, but I'm with 3 TV networks that air professional wrestling locally in Canada, and one of them, the Fight Network, actually has a US affiliate as well as one in the UK. So these companies, TV contracts to put content on there, they now have to go into their archives because they don't have any more new content. So just about every level of revenue that's generated through professional wrestling was cut off by this. I know that some people have kind of made the move over to Twitch and hope that their fan base can support them, which it's a kind of thing like I've never decided to do that. What we do on JoFo, we're not about making money. We're really about providing the people with an entertaining show, with unbiased news, but also an entertaining show. And we would never want to charge people for something that we do and it's fun. But I know a lot of guys, they've gone to Twitch. They've used that to help make some money. They've added a few more shirts on Pro Wrestling Tees. Again, I'm a guy who you guys probably hadn't heard of me until this year. Maybe you had, but probably
actually
not.
last year, man, when I found out about JoFo.
Okay,
and I started seeing you on their show. I was like, oh wow, who is this guy?
Yeah, that's because I've been a great stranger of social media. I never realized the power of it. I was always a guy, I'm a little bit old school. Again, I don't know how old you guys are, but
36. 36? Yeah.
Okay, so you're a little older than me. But
38.
Yeah, you guys are a little older than me. But I'm from the old school. With me, it was like when I started wrestling, and I was doing my first road trips. It was in the days of like MapQuest. Like that was, we were just one step after the physical map.
I remember that, man. Breaking out where do I?
Yeah, turn by turn.
Okay.
So, like I said, I'm a little younger than you guys, but still, I started in the days of MapQuest. Still remember going up and down the roads with that, looking at the sheets. Okay, we got to turn here. The GPS had, came out maybe a few years later, made things a little bit easier. But this is the thing where I was late to the social media game. And I realized that I was missing out. I was missing out on connecting with so many great people around the world. And that's how guys make it in this day and age. We're in the day and age of GIFs and highlight reels and that kind of stuff. And I always just felt, hey, I just put in the work. And that's all I need to do. I'm going to work on my body every day. I'm going to work on my spoken ability every day. And I'm going to make sure my wrestling is as good as can be, in every aspect of it. I didn't realize that social media is key. It doesn't matter what you do if nobody knows who you are. That's a lesson to all you kids out there watching who are hoping to make it big in wrestling. Don't be like me. Get yourselves out there. Don't be shy. people need to know who you are to care. And, that's something that I've learned. But, like, those kinds of things, Twitch, as much as I like to game every so often, I don't know if that would be something for me. But, never say never. Pro wrestling tees, not to say I don't need it. I think the idea is cool. But, it's like, I've been all right. I've made good investments that helped me during this downtime. So, I don't need people. If you like Jeremy Prophet, then by all means, you can buy one of my shirts. I could hook you up with a shirt, an 8x10, whatever you need. But I'm not one to go and push that kind of thing. Fan support, moral support, sending me a nice message, that means more than any money ever could. So I'm not here to take the people's money. I'm here to give them their money's worth whenever they see me or they hear me talk.
Well, man, awesome, dude, you got the gift of gab. I got to tell you that, man. And I want to start there, like with your career. So where did this gift of gab come from? Like, what wrestlers did you gravitate to that they just you wanted to fine tune that skill?
Yeah, the talking has kind of been something that I've been born with. It's like the guys I do Jofo with. The executive producer Bruno, who you never see on camera, he's someone I played hockey with him for 10 years. We were on the same team. I played hockey for 15 years. 10 of those years, he was on the same team as me. And he looks at me, he's like, man, when I see you doing your whole thing on wrestling, when you're on the mic and you're shredding some guy, it takes me back to the days when we were playing hockey and you'd be cutting promos on the guy from the bench, and then you get on the ice, you get in the guy's face. And I always said, like, I played all these sports, but I was always a wrestler, like a professional wrestler, masquerading as that kind of an athlete. I played baseball. Was the first sport I ever played. Played at a pretty high level. I always say that if I'd have had the same love for baseball that I do for professional wrestling, you guys would be interviewing a Hall of Famer right now. That's how good I was at baseball. I was a really good baseball player. But I was a wrestler playing baseball, man, and I love that you could talk trash from the bench, you could heckle the pitcher, you could, that was me. And I did track and field, and I was just a wrestler doing that. I was, running my race. I did the 100-meter dash, and I would win, and I'd be posing, I'd be doing like DX crotch chops. And, yes. Got me in trouble a few times. But that was me. That was anything I did. I was, even in school, I was on the school's comedy improv team. I competed in comedy improv. And so much of that was like inspired by wrestling, inspired by guys like The Rock, like Chris Jericho. Man, I just always liked when someone was good on the mic. And it's like, people ask me, like you guys do, they say like, who's your biggest inspiration? And I'd honestly say on the mic, it's not even from professional wrestling. Like, I look at a guy like Ice Cube as being one of my big inspirations, because Ice Cube had the ability, and I say this about myself, it's, the ability to cut a promo on somebody and people ain't never going to look at them the same once they hear you say that. And I feel all the greats have that. The Rock has that. He can point out something about someone, get the crowd chanting that. And to me, it's guys like Ice Cube. It's a guy like 50 Cent. It's a lot of guys from hip hop that inspire me on the mic. As well as guys from mixed martial arts, because like those guys are killing it. They're cutting better promos than wrestling. They don't have a script. They don't have to, be boxed in and follow a set of rules, which would be one of my biggest fears, because it's like, if you're gonna have to listen to some writer who's lived a cushy life and went to prep school, and then he's got to write about being a brother on the block that's lived through hardships. How are you gonna do that? You gotta live through this kind of stuff. It's gotta be real. It's gotta be natural, not somebody else's words put to you. And I've been fortunate on the indies that, I've not been given scripts by promoters. I've been, kind of told what they want me to say, but they know that I have the vocal delivery to be able to get the message across in my way with, my integrity for my character in what I do. So yeah, a lot of my inspirations, they come from outside of wrestling, and I think that's maybe what makes me unique, is that I'm not playing by the same set of rules as everybody else. I'm using what works in the real world.
Oh man, that's
I
awesome.
Love that. For me, me and Devin, we talk about this a lot in terms of like wrestling and character and like what is it that drew us in, and in listening to you, I definitely like my guess in talking to you is that like certain characters kind of also drew you in to wrestling, but I don't know, did you more gravitate towards the actual moves and wrestling itself, or was it those big characters that kind of made you say, hey, you know, this is something that I love now? Like, what was it?
No, as cliche as it may sound, I loved all of it. And I mean, some people may say that, but the difference is, look at me as a performer and look at what I do. I'm not one-dimensional. It's like, I know I'm a great athlete. You know, you're going to see moonsaults, dives, 450 splashes, all that kind of stuff in a Jeremy Prophet match. But that's not all I bring to the table. You know, I like that style of wrestling. But when it comes down to it, you know, I don't want to be pigeonholed as just that. I want to be a guy who can hold my own on the microphone. If The Rock's going to step in the ring with me, I'm going to give him a run for his money and, you know, show him that I can be his equal and on the same level, and maybe even surpass him because he's getting a little long in the tooth and a lot of his material has kind of run its course. But when it comes down, I always said, by the way, if ever I was given a live mic in the WWE and they say, this live mic, you can say whatever you want, kind of like they used to do on the NXT before it became a brand, when it was just kind of like a game show.
Yeah,
They would film during SmackDown. They'd give the guys the mic and they'd let them say anything. I'm like, man, I take the mic and I call out The Rock. Why? Because everyone would be talking about that. Because just based on that, people would say, man, we gotta see him and The Rock meet up. You know, whether it's a match, whether it's a backstage promo, you just talked yourself into a main spot by doing that. So, you know, I think a lot of guys, they get that free time on the mic. They don't realize how you can talk yourself into a lot of these great spots. I think maybe the last guy I saw who kind of knew that was Enzo Amore. And, you know, he was able to get by on just being a good talker because, let's face it, wrestling-wise, you know, the guy was a 4 on 10 on his best day. But when it comes down to it on the mic, man was money.
Yeah, he was
right.
All that to say, I was never influenced by just one thing. I was like, I want to be, you know, as good of a talker as The Rock. I want to be as good of an athlete as like a Rey Mysterio. You know, I want to be as aggressive as like a Chris Benoit. And like, I mean, I really have a soft spot for Benoit because he just looked so damn legit every time he stepped in the ring. And man, you know, he looked like he was beating the life out of his opponents. And I'm like, I want to not just be a high flyer, I want to be a vicious SOB when I'm in there. And, you know, all aspects of wrestling, all things that make wrestlers great. That's what I like to see. And I would look at guys and I would analyze, okay, what is this? What is it that he does? And I would put so-called superstars under a microscope and be able to take what it is that is their X factor and then duplicate it. Like, that's why I say I'm probably the most eclectic wrestler out there. You never see 2 Jeremy Prophet matches that look the same because I bring it all. You know, I don't want to be outshined in any aspect. If there's a hole in my game, I'm going to focus on it and I'm going to fine tune it and I'm going to make sure that, you know, I become really good at that. Any kind of weakness. So, you know, I can hold my own on the mic. I can hold my own with technical guys, grapplers, high flyers. You know, I got a gas tank. I can go for days. I'm pretty damn instructable. I think I could have been king of the death match if I wanted to be. It's that simple. It's that I don't put any limits on myself. You know, they call guys like Keith Lee limitless. I see myself in the same vein. I'm also limitless in what I do. And, you know, I think what makes me special is, you know, I got guts, you know. I got the willingness to step in there and to be me and to be me unapologetically.
Oh, wow. Speaking on, you know, wrestling superstars, if you can speak on this, on that experience, Fatal 4-Way between you, Mike Bailey, who was it? Evans. Right. The Fatal 4-Way with Mysterio as well. Yeah. If you could speak about that a little bit on that match, man.
Oh, yeah, that was awesome. I mean, that was in front of 1,000 people here in Montreal, in my hometown. And, yeah, getting to be in there with Rey Mysterio, who was such a gentleman to me when I tried out with WWE back in 2010. Was so nice, watched my match, gave me feedback, and was Rey. People don't know just how good of a human being Rey is. Rey Mysterio and Matt Hardy were just so helpful. The last 2 guys to leave the locker room, you know, made sure to come talk to me when they didn't have to. And then to get to wrestle Rey, I think that was 6 years later. It was an honor. And at the same time, you got to keep in mind that, you know, while I'm in there and I'm like, yeah, that's Rey Mysterio, and I respect him, but it's like, now you're in the ring with me. You know, you're going to go home and you're going to be like, you were in a fight with Jeremy Prophet. You're going to remember me. That's my goal. A lot of guys, you know, paying dues and being respectful, and I get that, and it's good to be like that. But when you step in the ring with somebody, you're on the same level, whether you want to be or not. And that's the feeling I would want someone like a Rey Mysterio to leave feeling. And getting to work with Mike Bailey, one of my best friends in wrestling. We've known each other our whole career. Started right at the same time, trained in different places, but pretty much followed the same paths here locally, then kind of went our separate ways, and always managed to find our way back to each other. It's insane because Bailey and I have such a great chemistry, but what a lot of people don't know is that it probably took about, I'd say about 5 years before anyone ever put us in the ring together. And it was just random. There'd be shows we'd be on, there'd be 2 good matches on those shows, it'd be my match and it'd be his match. But they'd never pair us up. Then it finally happened. And man, he and I were traveling all the time. We were in the same cars, going to different towns, but no one would pair us up. Finally it happened. It was really good. And then we probably didn't get back in the ring again until maybe about 2 years later. And it was even better. And every match I have with him, it gets better and better and better. If you guys think that 4-way with Rey Mysterio and Jack Evans was good, you should see the last singles match he and I had, which it's kind of hard to find. It happened at an IWS event. This company that I have this wonderful tag team title for happened at an IWS show not February, it was or may have been January of 2016, an event called IWS First Blood. And it was called First Blood because Mike Bailey hit me with a reverse Rana. I went headfirst through a table, and it busted me open for the first and only time in my career that I ever bled in a match was on that spot. But then again, when you think about it, going headfirst on a reverse Hurricane Rana, off the top rope, by the way, through a table, it was kind of a recipe for disaster to begin with. But yeah, that show, First Blood, it's kind of a lost classic. It's kind of the holy grail of IWS because no one can find it. So only the people who bought DVDs of it have it. But if that match ever sees the light of day, I think it may very well be my best match. It definitely top 3 in my career, and that's 15 years going strong. 15 years, easily over 1,000 matches.
Oh man, dude, that's awesome. That's awesome. Who would be your dream matchup, dream opponent? You know, living, dead, anybody. What would be if you could just say, hey, I want to wrestle this one person? Like, who would it be?
I always say that I feel the match that would bring everything full circle would be Chris Jericho. Because Chris Jericho was the first person I ever interviewed. And I interviewed him back in 2004 when he was coming to Montreal for a concert for Fozzy. I happened to be working on a newspaper at the time. And, you know, our press guy came in and he was just like, hey, we got an interview with this band, Fozzy. I think the lead singer is a wrestler, Jericho. Any of you guys? I'm like, I'm taking that story. And yeah, the rest is history. I called him up. I thought he was going to talk to me for, you know, maybe 10, 15 minutes, give me a few sound bites, and that's it. Man talked to me for over an hour. I actually still have the audio from the interview in my old school tape recorder. I may put it out there one day, but it was a great article, made the front page. And he was actually such a gentleman because he invited me backstage. He wanted to meet me. I just gave a copy of the article to one of his roadies. And he brought it to Jericho, and then he came back and said, he actually wants to meet you. Do you mind coming backstage? And I'd never met Chris Jericho before, but I mean, I talked to him for an hour on the phone, told him I was a wrestler, and yeah, he invited me backstage. I have a picture. It's out there. It's kind of gone viral. I think I've posted it, or the Jofo guys have posted it. You got a young me, there with Jericho in the back. And he gave me some of the greatest advice of my entire career, where he said, wrestling is going to be harder than anything you do. It'll be the hardest thing you ever do in your life. But if you stick at it, you work hard, you never give up, you will make it. Look at me. I made it. You can make it too. And those words have always stuck with me through my darkest times in wrestling. I always remember Chris Jericho saying, it's going to be hard. It'll be harder than anything in life. But if you stick with it, you work hard all the time, and never give up, you will make it. I remember it like it was yesterday. I even saw Chris in 2010 at Raw and SmackDown, and finally got a chance to pull him aside because he was very busy. He was working. I think they were doing a taping for. He might have worked the ECW taping and the SmackDown taping at the same time, like back to back. So he was pretty busy. But I finally got a word with him, and I told him, hey, you know, we met a couple of years ago. You gave me this advice, and you know, he had just joy in his eyes. So I think that it would bring everything full circle if Chris Jericho and I were to have a match. Now, I don't know how many more years he's got in him. He's also getting a little long in the tooth. But I see him doing some damn good work week after week on AEW. So I definitely think that there is a window for that to happen. Odds are AEW is probably the only place that could happen. Don't know if they're hiring Canadians, but that aside, I would love to get that match. I think that would be a great exclamation point on my career, regardless of wherever this road may take me in professional wrestling. So yeah, I mean, if Jericho wants to do that match, I think that would be the perfect match for all the fans, especially the Canadian fans, and for a guy who pretty much got started on this journey thanks to his words of encouragement.
Yeah, I think we got to make that happen, man. Somehow, some way, see that matchup between you two, man.
Like, harbinger of truth.
Yes, and I need some promos. I need some promo where I need to see that back and forth, and I need the match.
And I don't know if I told you guys this story the last time, but I got some comparisons to Jericho. I don't know if it's a Canadian thing. I don't know if it's, he subconsciously inspired a lot of what I do. He's definitely the reason I do a lion salt, because Chris Jericho's the first guy I ever seen do that, and I said, I'm going to do that, and I worked at it until I could. Still do it to this day. It's probably one of the few moves you can see in almost any one of my matches, and that's because of Chris Jericho. But I actually got a comparison from Coco Beware, who I wrestled back in, like 2009, and absolutely shredded him on the mic. I said, like, he was, people think he's Sir Mo from Men on a Mission. I outlived his bird. He was wrestling in a t-shirt, and I was like, obviously you don't want to take off the shirt because some women in the audience might get jealous. Like I just ripped into him, and his response was like saying, "Oh, I see what you are. I see what you are. You're a wannabe Chris Jericho." I'm like, okay, that's all good. I take that as a compliment.
You're like, got him.
Yes.
But yeah, okay, I was maybe inspired by Jericho, because what I always liked was in WCW, even when he wasn't getting any kind of a push, he just asked for 1 minute on the mic every night, and he started doing, his whole Jericho-holic shtick, and he'd always find a way to say something entertaining and memorable and make the people laugh, or, make the audience boo him, whatever it was. And he showed that really that's all you need. Give anybody 1 minute on the mic. If they've got any kind of mic skill, any kind of spoken eloquent ability on a microphone, they can make magic out of it.
Yeah, no doubt. I remember he caught my attention during the Monday Night Wars, and him and Dean Malenko was going at it, and he's cutting this promo of going down the list of 1,000 moves, and the commercial breaks, and they coming back, and he's still going down the list. I was like, who is this dude? Because I got to find out more about him, man.
The story behind that was he was reading the list of moves, and when they went into the commercial break, he started, that was in Chicago, I think.
Yeah, that was exactly.
He started making fun of the sports teams. He was like, "Oh, the Bears are terrible. The Blackhawks suck." of sports teams that he hated. So they were all booing. And when the TV cameras came back on, he starts reading the list, making it seem like his list was getting the heat.
That's brilliant. Oh man, hell yeah. So it is Black History Month, and with it being Black History Month right now, like, I don't know, they're showing a lot of, just celebrating, a lot of the different, just historical figures, and even with the wrestlers, we're seeing some people getting highlighted. For me, it's reflecting a little bit right now. Black wrestlers, we see, a lot of people just doing great work, right? And just recently we had it kind of confirmed we're going to have Sasha Banks and Bianca Belair, going at it for one of the matches at Mania, which is really cool. We have people like Apollo and Big E getting a lot of time in storylines right now. So from your perspective, seeing all this happening for Black wrestlers, talk a little bit about just how it makes you feel to see, this shine getting put on some of these athletes.
Oh, it's long overdue. I mean, I've been one of the most outspoken people. I just haven't been on social media, but in conversations with many people throughout the wrestling industry, one of my biggest agendas for the longest time was, why have we yet to see a Black WWE champion? I mean, it's all good and nice. We had The Rock, The Rock, proudly of Samoan descent. His father, believe it or not, his father is actually the greatest African-American Canadian-born wrestler in history. His father was born in Amherst, Nova Scotia, here in Canada. And it's something that I've actually been pretty outspoken about, and I'll come back to it in a minute, is that here in Canada, we need to recognize our Black history when it comes to Canadian wrestlers. Because other than Rocky Johnson, who else is there? And I mean, I would encourage you guys, anyone else, historians, there just haven't been a lot. And you think of the greatest Black Canadian wrestlers, Rocky Johnson. For all I know, the next one could be me. And it shouldn't be, because we should have a much richer history than that. Unfortunately, in Canada, there's a big disparity in that regard. Much like WWE, when you look at their list of WWE champions, that when you look at the different champions they've had, we've had champions from a few different parts of the world, United States, Canada. Andre the Giant held it for a minute. He's, from France. You had Sheamus, who's from Ireland. Now Drew McIntyre from Scotland. So why is it we haven't had more Black WWE champions? Kofi Kingston got the belt a couple of years back, and he's the first one in such a long time. Not to be confused with the World Heavyweight title, which was the WCW title, which Ron Simmons already broke that barrier, but was then held by Booker T, Mark Henry. So the WCW title actually had more Black champions than the WWE title, to the point where you got to ask yourself, was there some kind of a conspiracy going on here? Because we all know it just takes the flip of a pen to choose the right person to win that match. And I look at a moment like Great American Bash, I think it was 2007 or 8, where Bobby Lashley challenged John Cena for the WWE title. And I remember being very proud, going to watch that event at a sports bar just down the street from my house with my father. And I was looking forward to finally seeing a Black WWE champion. Unfortunately, we didn't get it. Even at one point, they had a scramble match for the title. It was like Triple H, Jeff Hardy, Brian Kendrick was in the match, along with MVP and Shelton Benjamin. The only two guys in the match who didn't even get to hold the belt for a second were Shelton Benjamin and MVP. So it's just, there was just so much evidence that there's clearly got to be someone that's got it in for us. And now, lo and behold, here we finally are in 2021, where we see potentially Bobby Lashley becoming WWE champion. I would hope that he does. I've wrestled Bobby Lashley, spent a weekend on the road with him too, and he's a great guy. Long overdue that he become WWE champion. Also to see Sasha and Bianca Belair for the women's championship, I think that's a great choice. I think it's going to do a lot of good for the Black community. And to see the rise of other talent throughout the roster. I mean, now you can turn on pretty much any show and you'll see Street Profits, you'll see Ricochet, you'll see Naomi, you'll see African Americans represented at every level of the company. I'm trying to think of some from NXT right now. Awkward, but I'm sure there's some.
Yeah, I was gonna say a lot of them. You said Street Profits called up, Bianca called up. Currently right now.
But
Leon Ruff?
Leon, yeah, and Swerve Scott.
Swerve Scott, yeah. There's Ashanti Adonis on 205 Live.
Right.
A handful there, yeah. They could maybe do with adding a Jeremy Prophet to their list.
There you go.
But, with that said, I mean, even throughout other wrestling companies, Ring of Honor, seeing Jay Lethal, Jonathan Gresham, Shane Taylor, all these guys in predominant spots, championship spots. It's long overdue. I mean, I had heard that over the years there have been many that have been considered. Tony Atlas himself said that to me personally, he said he was considered and was given the go-ahead that he was going to get the WWF title. But he unfortunately had some issues and he missed a couple tapings, wasn't reliable. I've heard that even Junkyard Dog might have been considered at one point. We can't deny a lot of these guys, they were over. And that's the top criteria. I mean, Hulk Hogan, we all know he wasn't the greatest wrestler, but he was over with a lot of people. Yeah. And so that really was the only criteria. But I think that over the years, there were a lot of guys that got passed over. When I would see a guy like R-Truth back in 2009, when he made that heel turn and he was wrestling John Cena at Capital Punishment, they should have pulled the trigger on him.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, they'd rather have the belt on a guy like The Miz, who to me is not that I don't like The Miz, but Miz, it can't even be argued that he's an inferior talent to R-Truth in every aspect.
Oh, yeah.
So it's just a case of, I feel that a lot of times there were very talented African-American wrestlers that got passed over for others. And whether it's blatant racism, whether it's maybe they want to feel that these guys aren't going to be as marketable or whatever the political swing may be, it's still something that's gone on for way too long. And hopefully now we're living in a time where there's going to be more equality, where they can just look at the performer, his merits and not feel that they should be held back because of the color of their skin, regardless of what that color may be.
Yeah, man. It's definitely like right now I'm seeing it moving in a positive direction. Specifically on the WWE side, we're seeing a lot more storylines, like actual, TV time being invested into a lot of these stars. So, I'm hopeful that we continue this trend, and definitely with Bobby, I hope that he gets the title and finally does become that next person to hold that next black person to hold the WWE championship. But speaking of Bobby Lashley, you mentioned wrestling with him and being on the road with him. So I gotta ask, man,
yeah,
tell us a little bit about that. Yeah.
I didn't know what to expect with Bobby Lashley. See, a lot of these guys that were in WWE from around when I started in wrestling, like I used to go to a lot of WWE events throughout my life, but especially from 2003, I'd say right up to 2008, I'd go to a ton of events. I had a friend of mine, I call him my partner in crime. He was the one person who's maybe more of a super fan than me. And, I keep that out of my work. I keep it separate, how big of a fan I was of wrestling, and I still am. I mean, I still watch all the programming. I watch all the major companies, WWE, AEW, New Japan, Ring of Honor, not too much MLW, but I know they exist. But, all that to say, I love wrestling, and I was a big super fan when I was younger, and I'd go to tons of shows, tons of pay-per-views. I got a collection of those chairs that they give you when you sit on the floor, and it's got like a poster on it. I got a ton of those, and that's all thanks to my good friend Paul, who was the super fan of all super fans, and I just so happened to have a car and to love wrestling almost as much as him. So I'd met a lot of these guys. Bobby Lashley, I had never met. But I'd heard good things about him from a lot of the other people, like Sylvain Grenier, who I had trained with, who he was, training me around that same time, 2009 or so. And he would always speak very highly of Bobby Lashley. He'd be like, "Oh yeah, Bobby's legit. He's an amateur wrestler. Him and I, we used to go in the ring and we shoot with each other before the shows." And in my mind, I'm like, "Yeah, I'm sure Bobby, he was handing you your ass on a regular basis in that ring. Like, ain't no way that a guy like you is gonna be able to go around Bobby Lashley. No disrespect, but tank." So when they told me, I wasn't even supposed to wrestle Bobby Lashley. I was just supposed to travel with him. I was going to pick him up at the airport and then bring him to two shows that we were doing. One in Brantford, Ontario, and then the next one was in Barrie, Ontario. That's a town where I've wrestled quite a bit. So, picked him up at the airport and stuff, went to the hotel. He said his neck was a little sore. And we just got to talking. We talked about everything. We talked about, first it was MMA, because I'm a big mixed martial arts fan. Actually missing a UFC right now that I'm recording to come talk to you guys, but that's okay, because y'all are my family. I love you guys. I don't mind.
Thank you.
But, we got to talking about MMA because he had been doing a couple of fights and was in Bellator. Man has an outstanding MMA record. So we started talking about that. Then we started talking about his time in WWE and in TNA and about Brock. And that's one thing that, for me, I really want to see him face Brock Lesnar, because what people don't know that I know is, he really wanted that fight. And this is going back to like 2000, when was it we had that match? It's like 2011 where I picked him up. He wasn't in WWE. I don't think he had even gone back to Impact yet. But he was already talking about wanting to fight Brock Lesnar. And he had like a storyline in mind where he's like, I had this story that I come back and like, he even said like maybe he goes into like a bit of a down. Like he talked about like wanting to put on weight and be able to beat guys, but kind of beat them effortlessly, but like he's struggling, and then kind of goes into like a Rocky, like where he starts training, comes back shredded, and he's like, Brock, I'm here, I'm going to take the belt from you. And he was like super motivated to want to come back and fight Brock. And that's going back to 2011. Wow. So now, 9 years later, man is still, I'd say he's still in the prime of his life. He still looks like $1 million, can still go. I'd say there is no better time to do him and Brock, because that's a match that I've been wanting to see, a match that I think everyone in their right mind wants to see. I don't know of anyone who says they don't want to see that match, and I know it's a match that he wants, especially a lot. So getting back to me and Lashley, I had done a show that night. He worked a tag match, and I wrestled a guy by the name of Johnny Devine. He was in TNA. He was X Division champion at one point, part of Team Canada. I think he was also called Havoc as part of Serotonin, was a group with Raven. I worked him on that show, and it was cool because Lashley was like giving me advice and stuff. He was watching the match, and I'm trying to I'm gonna try to keep it PG. I don't want to affect your monetization.
No, it's all good, man. It's all good, man. Go for it.
But his feedback, it was great because he was like, "Oh, I love your wrestling. You're so vicious in there, but like, you're too good looking. You look too good when you come out with your jacket and everything, your sunglasses, and it's like." It's weird because, like, I wouldn't think you'd be so vicious and violent in your wrestling. You got to be more like a piece of shit in there. You got to really be a rough piece of shit. And, almost like a Skinner kind of character. And that always stuck with me, him saying that. And me trying to explain to him where I'm like, yeah, but I'm kind of like a jack of all trades. I'm kind of like, I like when I come out and people are like, oh, this guy, doing his pretty boy thing with his coat on and whatever. And, but then they see me wrestle and they're like, okay, we got to take him seriously. So it's like, I've been in there with some rough, tough dudes. I've been in there with guys like Hannibal. I've not seen anyone tougher than him in wrestling, but I've been in there with, the Bobby Lashleys, the Lance Archers, Brian Cage, all the so-called baddest, badasses, whatever you want to call them. And I don't give an inch. It comes down to, okay, we're going to see who's going to back up first. I'm going to take the middle. I'm going to hold this ring, and I'm going to be the monster in there. It's not how big you are. It's the fight that you bring. It's not how hard you hit. It's how hard you can get hit and keep coming forward. And that's what demoralizes any kind of bully you stand toe-to-toe with. I'm going to step out of promo mode here for a second, get back on track in the story. All that to say, we stayed at the same hotel. We roomed together, he and I. And, man, like we just had a lot in common and great conversation. We get to the show the next day. They have him paired off with Harry Smith, David Boy Smith Jr., son of the British Bulldog. They're doing the main event. So I always appreciated that, he was telling me, he's like, man, I really want to wrestle you. He's like, I enjoy talking with you. This is going so well. I think we could do a great match. And I'm like, it would be an honor to wrestle you. And like, I have so much respect for Bobby Lashley. I mean, look, I thought he was going to be the first black WWE champion. Like, I think highly of this guy. So I'm like, yeah, let's figure something out. Maybe the promoter can, maybe do a bonus match, some kind of thing like that. He walks up to the promoter and he's like, what do you got for me tonight? And they're like, well, we have you against Harry Smith. That's the main event. We've been building it for a while. Okay, good. How about you have me wrestle Jeremy instead? And keep in mind that this may not go over well in certain promotions, but it is a promoter that really thinks highly of me. So I'm watching this and I'm like, I'm pretty confident this is gonna work out. And the promoter's kind of like, well, I mean, I'm sure it'd be a good match, but we've been advertising you and Harry. And he's like, oh, that's fine. Me and him can do something. Maybe have Jeremy. He's a good heel. I saw him last night. He's great in there. He's intense. Maybe have him and a partner come in. They jump us, double DQ. We give the people a nice tag match. Make everyone go home happy. And the promoter's like, okay, yeah, I think that could work, but I got to talk to my partner. And Lashley then says my favorite line. He's just like, tell your partner this. Either I wrestle Jeremy tonight, or I don't wrestle at all. How about that?
Man.
Whoa, wow. High praise from the Almighty.
That for me, like no one else for that match. And sure enough, we went in there and we had a hell of a match. And then the best part is like, we're in the locker room, we're getting changed and everything. Him and Harry are there. We're all talking over the match. And he pulls Harry aside and he's like, man, I know this promoter wants us to go over, but like, how about we like, hit some big moves on them. You and I start celebrating. Let's just have them roll us up. 1, 2, 3. Put them over. They're the local guys. They're from here. Let's give them the win. Come on, the people are gonna like. No one will see that coming. Like he went to bat for me so hard that I'm like, wow, this man, United States champion, Division I, NCAA amateur wrestling champion.
Yep.
Should have gone to the Olympics. All these things, and he's going to bat for me, just a guy that he's hung out with and saw work one time like that. But I mean, that's the Jeremy Prophet story. I make an impression on a lot of people. I've always said, you give me 5 minutes with any decision maker in wrestling. You give me 5 minutes with Vince McMahon. You give me 5 minutes with Tony Khan. With any of these people, with whoever's running Ring of Honor, Joe Koff, or whoever these guys are, Delirious. Give me 5 minutes. And you'll find out what Jeremy Prophet's all about, and you'll see something special in me. All the blessings that I've gotten in this business have been through people seeing me and kind of being like, I want to know more about this guy. This cat, he's got something special about him. And I know I do. It's just I'm unfortunately from an area where scouting is not as prevalent and predominant as it should be, and that's why I've kind of flown under the radar. Plus, believe it or not, I talk a big game when I'm on here, but that's because this is a platform to sell me, so I got to do that. But when it comes down to it, I'm a very humble guy. I like to let my work speak for itself. Unfortunately, we live in a day and age here in wrestling where it's all about who you know, who can open the door for you. There's no real scouting. There's just friends of friends. And unfortunately, I don't get to cross the border to be able to come make some new friends that can put in a word for me with the right people. But as I always say, I mean, give me 5 minutes, sit me across from anyone, put me on a Zoom call with anyone, 5 minutes. And, I will talk my way into being where I want to be and be able to back it up with my actions and my body of work.
Oh, man. Yeah. You definitely made an impression on me. Like, it was 2 matches that I got a feel for you. The Fatal 4-Way, I saw how good all-around wrestler you were. And then 2006 when you went against Green Phantom. Oh, and I saw how tough you was. I was like, oh, you did this botched table spot. He put the table up on all 4 legs, and then one of the legs fell. So now the table's on 3 legs. And he still powerbombed you through the fucking table. Yeah. I was like, holy shit, he still took that bump?
Oh, I'm durable, man. It's another thing that people don't realize when they look at me is that I'm very durable. I don't know if it's because of the cold Canadian weather we got up here in Montreal or what it is, but wrestling takes toughness. I was always the kind of guy where I'm not scared to bump. I'm not scared to land on my head. And look, I haven't been injured. And I think that it's not a case of recklessness. It's a case of the more you expose yourself to a certain thing and the less fear you wrestle with, the less likely you are to get hurt. You know, if you're scared to bump, if you're scared of certain things, that's where you get hurt. You got to go in there with a big level of trust with your opponent, knowing that, hey, look, we could be wrestling in front of 1,000 people. I could get hurt. We could be just doing a few things in practice. And, guy could drop me wrong. I get a concussion. I break my neck. I'm quadriplegic. You got to accept those things. God forbid that ever happens. But the same thing can go wrong in practice that can happen on a show. So I wrestle with very little fear. By the grace of God, I think I've been blessed with having good opponents, safe opponents at the very least. But also at knowing how to protect myself and having a certain level of durability. There are very few times where I've felt unsure about something. I kind of have a good way of looking at an opponent, sizing them up, and being like, yeah, I don't think you can hurt me. Like, I don't think you could hurt me if you tried. Really, like I know how to protect myself, and I don't think you're going to try to do that. And I've been told, certain guys, they've said, oh, I had to rough you up a bit. I had to, you gave me this one shot that was a little stiff. That's why I had to hit you. I'm like, you hit me hard? Bring it. I don't take anything personally in the ring. It's like, look, we're professional wrestlers. We're more or less paid to fight. So, we're going to do something in the ring. You're going to hit me hard. You're not going to hear from me, why'd you hit me so hard for? You're just going to get it back. And if that's the level you want to work at, okay, we can work at that level. I'm fine with that. In fact, the people will like it because it'll look legit. But the idea is, you want to make it look like you're killing the guy without actually killing the guy. But at the same time, you're a professional. I'm not going to take it personally because one guy, throws a shot that's going to be a little hard and maybe, I'll feel it more than others. Okay, good. Just be willing to take what you give. That's it. Some guys, they can dish it out, but they can't take it. And then I noticed that right away when they throw something. I'm like, okay, yeah, you're coming out swinging. Now you're going to see how hard I hit, and I hit them, and they melt. And all of a sudden, now we're back to barely feeling anything. But none of it. It's give and take. Some guys work stiffer than others. If you want to work stiff, fine by me. You want to not. If I'm not going to feel you, then you're not going to feel me. But it's also knowing that you don't take this stuff personally. Like I've not encountered anyone where I felt they were trying to take liberties on me. The worst I've ever encountered, I think, was maybe one of my first matches in Massachusetts, where I wrestled a guy who had a terrible memory, just a terrible memory, and an unwillingness to want to improve that. And so we kind of put some stuff together for the people. He kind of had his own idea, and I guess it's one of those situations where I left it in the hands of God, and by the end of the match, he ended up tearing his bicep or his tricep, whatever it may be. And, he kind of made his way to the back, got himself counted out in a match that I think he was going over it. So other than that, I haven't had nothing comes to mind of any negative experiences with people. And I think it's a case of, wrestling is kind of like personal training. You know, I've helped some people in training and dieting, that kind of thing. You kind of want to make them comfortable. You don't want to take them past their limits. And sometimes you got to tell them, hey, you know, you can push a bit more. You know, let's get a few more reps off that bench. Sometimes you got to push an opponent, but you got to keep them comfortable and happy with you at the same time too, so that way you guys can do, you know, 10 more matches. That's just my philosophy to it. So yeah, it's a game of push and keep within their comfort zone.